There is a point deep within your brain, tiny, about the size of a grain of rice. Nothing about it seems extraordinary. But thousands of years ago, the Egyptians carved its image into stone. The Indians placed it at the center of Shiva's forehead. The Romans forged it into sacred bronze. From forgotten statues in Assyria to ayahuasca rituals in the Amazon, every ancient culture saw it as something else entirely. A doorway that opens inward. Today, science calls it the pineal gland. It regulates melatonin. It controls sleep. And as we grow older, it calcifies. It turns to stone. But the ancients believed it was far more than that. They called it the third eye, the point where the soul enters at birth and leaves when we die. Have you ever felt something beyond logic, a knowing you couldn't explain? A dream that didn't feel like yours? A moment of intuition so strong it cut through reality like lightning? Maybe that wasn't random. Maybe the eye within you is still awake, buried deep in the center of your brain. Right where the two hemispheres meet is a structure that doesn't look like much. No larger than your thumbnail, no brighter than the rest of your mind. And yet, it is the only part of your brain that sits alone, a solitary watchman between worlds. The pineal gland, shaped like a pine cone, soft at first, but with time, it hardens. Crystals form, calcification begins. Doctors say it's normal, part of aging. But what exactly is aging? Is it the body slowing down? Or is it the light within dimming? This gland doesn't control movement. It doesn't help you solve math problems, but it knows when the sun rises. And when your body should rest, it reads the sky. Even when your eyes are closed. How? Because unlike most glands, the pineal contains photoreceptive cells, light sensitive, like the ones in your eyes, except these are sealed in darkness. Why would something buried in pitch black be built to see the light? In the 1950s, scientists confirmed that the pineal gland produces melatonin, a hormone that controls your circadian rhythm, your body's natural clock. When the sun sets, melatonin rises, your thoughts begin to slow, your dreams prepare to rise. But here's the question no lab can answer. Why does the gland responsible for sleep appear in ancient texts as the gateway to other worlds? The French philosopher René Descartes called it the seat of the soul. He believed it was the bridge between thought and spirit, between the material and the eternal. Was he wrong, or did he simply see what most of us forget to look for? When you sleep, your body rests, but your mind, it travels through memory, through dreams, through visions that feel more real than waking life. And when people die, some say they see a tunnel of light, a pull, as if something within them knows exactly where to go. Where is that light coming from? And who or what is watching? Scientists today dismiss the pineal gland as interesting but irrelevant, a relic of evolution. But ancient wisdom whispers something else, that within that tiny, hardened seed in your skull is a key, a sensor, a compass pointing not outward, but inward. And if you learn to listen, you might hear it whisper, too, across deserts, through jungles, carved into temples, staffs, and crowns. One symbol appears again and again, the pine cone. It shows up in cultures that never met, on continents that never touched, and yet they all gave it the same meaning: divine knowledge, awakening, the moment between life and death. Why a pine cone? Because nature hides its patterns in plain sight. A pine cone spirals like galaxies, like hurricanes, like fingerprints. Its form follows sacred geometry, and to ancient minds, that meant it held a secret. In ancient Egypt, the Eye of Horus was carved into tombs and temples, a symbol of protection, healing, and higher sight. Look closely. and you'll see something uncanny. Place the eye of Horus beside a cross-section of the human brain, and the match is nearly perfect. The shape of the thalamus, the corpus callosum, and right at the center, the pineal gland. Coincidence or a clue left behind? The Egyptians believed the journey after death wasn't a straight road, but a transformation of perception, a soul awakening to its true nature. The pineal, they thought, was the organ of that awakening. At a guide through the veil, they crowned Osiris, god of the underworld, with a staff topped by a pine cone, flanked by serpent symbols of energy, wisdom, rebirth. It was not just decoration, it was a map. Thousands of miles east, in the high temples of India, another figure sat in deep meditation, Shiva, the destroyer, the liberator, his hair twisted like the coils of a pine cone, snakes circling his neck, a third eye blazing from his forehead. He doesn't just see the world, he sees through it, into the nature of being itself. In Hinduism and Buddhism, this third eye is no metaphor. It's a chakra, a point of inner vision, linked directly again to the pineal gland, and the practices built around it. Meditation, breathwork, mantras, they weren't rituals. They were technologies for tuning the mind to something more. Now, shift west to the ruins of Assyria, where winged beings, half man, half eagle, stand guard outside ancient palaces. Each holds a pine cone in one hand and a small bucket in the other. These were Apkallu sages. They weren't farmers. They were transmitters of divine knowledge. The cone wasn't for planting seeds. It was for planting truth. In Mesoamerica, the goddess Chicomecoatl, giver of corn and life, was often shown holding a pine cone. Corn, nourishment for the body. Pine cone, nourishment for the soul. Even in the Amazon, where pine trees do not grow, those who drink ayahuasca report visions of spirals, serpents, and yes, pine cone-shaped energy centers opening in their minds. The pattern persists, the pine cone follows, and then we come to the Vatican. Yes, that Vatican. In the court of the pine cone sits a massive bronze sculpture, ancient and undeniable. The staff of the Pope, topped with a pine cone. Is it Christian symbolism, or is it a relic of something older? Something the church absorbed, but never explained? How did so many cultures, with oceans and centuries between them, all reach for the same shape and give it the same sacred meaning? Maybe the ancients weren't copying each other. Maybe they were all listening to the same whisper from the same place. Within, for thousands of years, the pineal gland was seen as a sacred portal, a key to divine perception. But then came the scalpel, the microscope, the age of science, and with it, a different kind of gaze, one that cuts and classifies, that measures what it can see and dismisses what it cannot. Modern neuroscience defines the pineal gland as an endocrine organ. It secretes melatonin. It helps regulate your sleep-wake cycle. It is triggered by light and silenced by darkness. That's it. No mysticism, no soul, just chemistry. But even in the halls of logic, a strange echo remains. In the 1600s, René Descartes, father of modern philosophy, studied the human brain with surgical obsession. He believed the mind and the body were two distinct entities, the physical and the immaterial, but something had to link them, a bridge, a translator between thought and flesh. His answer, the pineal gland. He called it the seat of the soul, the only part of the brain not split in two, the only part that could unite duality. Centuries later, neuroscientists rolled their eyes. They said Descartes was poetic, but mistaken. They sliced the gland, measured its hormones, tracked its cycles, and yet no machine could prove or disprove his claim. Because how do you measure the soul? How do you capture meaning? when the tools you use were built to avoid it. But something strange keeps happening. In states of deep meditation or under the influence of certain plant medicines, people report visions, not hallucinations, but experiences of light, of sound, of presence. Some say they leave their bodies. Some say they meet their ancestors. Some say they remember things they've never lived. When we dream, we accept impossibilities as truth. We walk through time. We speak with the dead. We know things without learning them. And where is melatonin made? Where do our sleep cycles begin? The pineal gland. So perhaps science isn't wrong, but maybe it's incomplete. Maybe the pineal is both a biological switch and a spiritual antenna, a gland and a gate. And maybe that gate, like any doorway, only opens when you're quiet enough to hear the key. You don't need a temple or a robe or a master on a mountain. Sometimes all you need is silence and a little time with yourself, because long before we had science, before brain scans and hormone charts, we had practice. We had the body and breath and a question: how do I wake up? From the inside. Across India, yogis sat in stillness, eyes closed, spine straight, attention turned inward. They weren't trying to escape the world. They were trying to see it more clearly. They believed a sleeping force lies coiled at the base of the spine, Kundalini, the serpent of energy. And when awakened, it rises, passing through the chakras until it bursts through the third eye. At that moment, they said, the illusion of separation dissolves. You see beyond form, beyond thought, beyond time. But how did they do it? Not through belief, through discipline, breath control, pranayama, meditation, dhyana, sound vibration, mantra, and sometimes simply watching the mind spin until it slows. And in that stillness, a crack of light appears. Modern science has begun to catch up. EEG scans show that deep meditation can synchronize brain waves into theta and gamma states, the same frequencies found in lucid dreaming and creative insight. Breathwork increases oxygen flow and reduces cortisol, bringing the body into a calm alertness. Sound certain frequencies can shift neural patterns, open memory gates, and yes, even activate the pineal gland's response to internal rhythm. There's no mystery to these practices, but there is power, because in a world of constant stimulation, silence has become a superpower, and awareness, simple, bare awareness, is the one thing no machine can replicate. Let me tell you a story. A man in his 50s, burnt out, divorced, barely sleeping. He starts waking up early, not to work, but to sit, eyes closed, just breathing. 10 minutes, then 20. A few weeks pass. He dreams more. He notices more. One morning, he watches the sunrise and cries, not from sadness, but from remembering something he didn't know he'd forgotten. This isn't fiction. It happens every day when we turn down the volume and listen. Your third eye doesn't open like a switch. It opens like a flower when the light is right, when the soil is ready, and when you've finally stopped trying to force it. Close your eyes. Now, imagine dreaming, but you're awake. The colors are more vivid than life. Time loses shape. You feel like you're not in your body anymore, but you're not scared. You're not hallucinating. You're remembering something older than words, something real. That's what many describe. After encountering a molecule called DMT, dimethyltryptamine, it's been called the spirit molecule, not by mystics, but by Dr. Rick Strassman, a clinical psychiatrist who conducted some of the first government-approved DMT trials. In the 1990s, volunteers were injected. They lay in sterile hospital rooms, and yet what they saw was anything but clinical. Some reported geometric worlds, endless, sacred, alive, Others described beings made of light, entities that knew them, timeless presences that taught without speaking, that showed without touching, no suggestion, no leading questions. Yet the stories echoed across subjects, patterns of serpents, spirals, eyes that see within. But here's where it gets even stranger. DMT isn't just a drug. It's already inside you, produced naturally in mammals, in trace amounts. Scientists believe it may be released during moments of birth, death, and possibly during deep meditation. Some speculate the pineal gland may be its source, though modern science hasn't confirmed it. It hasn't disproved it either. So why would nature hide a compound that launches consciousness into entirely different dimensions inside your brain? Why do countless cultures report visions of other worlds after using plants that contain it? From Amazonian shamans drinking ayahuasca to monks entering trance through mantra, the portal looks different, but the passage feels the same. Critics say it's just your brain, firing in weird ways. But what if that's the point? What if your brain, for a brief moment, opens a frequency not normally accessible, like a radio tuned past its usual stations, and suddenly you hear a voice that isn't yours, but feels like home? Strassman called DMT the first hint of a biological mechanism for spiritual experience, maybe not proof, but a doorframe, a threshold, a reason to wonder what else this small, quiet gland might be holding back. And then comes the question no scientist can answer. Are we producing less DMT because our pineal glands are calcifying? Are we forgetting how to dream with our eyes closed? Or worse, how to awaken when they're open? If the pineal gland truly holds a key, what happens when the key is locked from the outside? In the quiet war between ancient wisdom and modern convenience, few things are louder than this question. Because in the name of health, of progress, of safety, we may be silencing the very part of us designed to awaken. Let's begin with fluoride. Added to tap water in many countries, fluoride is praised for its role in preventing tooth decay, but research, including a study from Harvard, suggests something else. Chronic fluoride exposure may contribute to the calcification of the pineal gland. A 1997 study by Dr. Jennifer Luke found fluoride accumulation in the pineal was even higher than in bones and teeth. The result, a gland once soft, light-sensitive, becomes stone. Light can no longer pass through, neither can signals, neither can dreams. But fluoride is just the beginning. We live inside invisible webs, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 5G, constant streams of information, bathing our bodies in frequencies we cannot feel, but our cells might. Some studies suggest that electromagnetic radiation may interfere with melatonin production. Once again, the pineal gland takes the hit. You may fall asleep, but something inside you remains restless, disoriented, disconnected from its rhythm. The ancients built temples in alignment with the stars. Now, we live in buildings wrapped in signals we don't see and don't question. This isn't conspiracy. It's caution, because whether or not these modern forces suppress some spiritual ability, they are changing how our bodies work, how we sleep, how we dream, and maybe how we awaken. And then there's the pace of life itself. Endless notifications, screens, artificial light at midnight, caffeine to wake us, pills to put us down. The pineal doesn't need much, but it does need rhythm and silence and dark and trust. Most people today never experience true darkness, not just outside, but within, always thinking, always scrolling, always reacting. In this storm of noise, how can we expect the most silent part of us to whisper? But here's the good news. Awareness is power. The moment you begin to question, to pause, to turn down the noise. You start waking it up again, every hour without screen light, every night with full sleep, every quiet breath, taken with intention. It matters because ancient wisdom isn't lost. It's waiting right there, behind your eyes, within your skull, soft as a whisper. Once upon a time, awakening, the third eye, meant decades of inner discipline. It was the work of monks, mystics, masters of stillness. Today, you can buy it as a pendant, as a t-shirt, as a TikTok trend, with flashing lights and lo-fi music. Just raise your vibration, eat this herb, or listen to this frequency, and voila, you're enlightened. Somewhere along the road, we stopped treating the third eye as a sacred gateway and turned it into a marketing slogan. Aesthetic over essence, hype over humility. There are now courses that promise to activate your pineal gland in 24 hours. Apps that track your spiritual level. Gurus self-proclaimed who tell you you'll gain psychic powers. If you buy their $999 crystal set, it's easy to laugh, but also easy to fall for because the longing is real. People want to feel again, to remember something deeper, to reconnect, and in that vulnerability, some sell illusion dressed as insight. But here's the truth. Your third eye doesn't open because you chase it. It opens because you stop running, you stop numbing, you stop performing. You turn inward, not to gain power, but to meet yourself honestly. Real awakening is quiet. It's not flashy. It's not something you can post. Sometimes, it's not even pleasant. Because when the third eye opens, you don't just see the light. You see your shadows. You see where you've been blind, where you've been asleep. With your eyes wide open, the true signs of awakening are not visions or voices. They are things like silence that you no longer fear, compassion that arises without effort, clarity that cuts through illusion like a blade, and presence so deep it feels like time has stopped just to let you breathe. The ancient sages didn't need followers. They didn't need likes or shares. They sat beneath trees, they stared at stars, and they listened until something inside them began to speak back. So be careful who you follow, and even more, be careful why. Because the true third eye doesn't help you escape this world. It helps you see it clearly. And when you do, everything changes in a world where we're drowning in information, but starving for meaning. The third eye still matters, not as a superstition, not as a shortcut, but as a compass pointing inward. When the world keeps pulling us out, most of us were taught to look outward for answers, to books, to experts, to algorithms. But the ancients knew something. We're only starting to remember. There is a knowledge that cannot be taught, only recalled and knowing, that comes not from learning, but from listening. And the third eye, that silent organ of inner sight, is where that remembering begins. You don't need to believe in magic to value clarity. You don't need to see visions to know when you've been blind. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you feel a truth your mind hasn't caught up with yet, every time you dream of something you haven't lived, but somehow know you are seeing with the eye behind the eyes. So yes, the pineal gland regulates sleep, but maybe it also wakes something deeper, not powers, not predictions, but presence, a stillness so real you begin to recognize the noise you've been living in. And maybe this is the real miracle, that inside a body built of carbon and water, evolved through chance and time, there exists a single, solitary structure shaped like a pine cone, buried in darkness, that has carried the memory of light for thousands of years. And it's still there, right now, waiting. So when you lie down tonight and the world begins to fade, pause, feel, notice that gentle tug towards somewhere deeper, that whisper just behind your thoughts. And remember, you are not just falling asleep, You are crossing into the oldest doorway you've ever known. The third eye isn't just ancient, it's yours, still, now, and always open. If you've made it this far, maybe something inside you has stirred, not because of what was said, but because of what was remembered, not by your mind, but by something quieter, older, truer. The third eye isn't a destination. It isn't something you open, like a door you forgot to knock on. It's already there, always has been. It waits for silence. It waits for stillness. It waits for you. So tonight, when the noise fades and you close your eyes, don't just fall asleep. Listen to the rhythm beneath your thoughts, to the breath that carries memory, to the light behind your eyes. Because somewhere in the dark, between the last thought and the first dream, you might just remember. You've been awake all along,